Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we are exploring the strange and powerful history of pandemics. This is a story about moments when something too small to see changed the direction of human life. A sickness could begin with a single person, then move through a city before anyone understood what was happening. Long before microscopes, people watched whole communities change and searched for meaning in fear. Pandemics have tested every age that faced them. They have revealed how connected people truly are. They have pushed medicine forward when old answers were no longer enough. They have also shown how much survival depends on trust. This subject is not only about illness. It is about discovery. It is about courage under pressure. It is about the slow arrival of knowledge at the very moment it was needed most. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Allow your breathing to slow. And as the day begins to fade away, join me as we explore this remarkable history together. Let's begin. The Black Death may have changed Europe's future in only a few years. Before the Great Plague arrived, much of Europe was locked into a familiar medieval order. Lords held land, peasants owed labor, and daily life moved within old boundaries that seemed almost permanent. Then death came with such speed that villages lost neighbors, farms lost workers, and families lost entire branches of memory. The shock was not only emotional, it changed what people were worth. Survivors suddenly found their labor in demand. Some demanded better pay. Others left old obligations behind. Land that had once been carefully worked fell silent. In towns, craftspeople and merchants had new opportunities because skilled hands were scarce. The catastrophe did not create a modern world overnight, but it cracked structures that had felt immovable. It forced people to rethink work, wealth, authority, and the value of an ordinary human life. Out of terror came movement, and Europe was never quite the same again. Smallpox became the only human disease ever erased from nature. For centuries, smallpox was one of the most feared infections on Earth. It killed many of the people it touched, and survivors could carry lifelong marks on their faces. What makes its ending so extraordinary is that humanity did not simply learn to treat it better. Humanity drove it out of natural circulation completely. This was possible because the virus had no hidden animal reservoir. It needed human beings to survive and spread. Health workers crossed deserts, climbed mountains, entered crowded cities, and reached isolated villages with vaccine supplies that had to be protected carefully. They searched for every last case, then surrounded outbreaks with vaccination. The campaign required science, endurance, trust, and immense coordination. In the late 20th century, the final natural cases disappeared. A disease that once haunted dynasties and households across continents was reduced to carefully guarded laboratory samples. It remains one of public health's most astonishing victories. The 1918 flu reached places that war never touched. The world was already exhausted when this influenza began spreading. Soldiers were moving between camps, ships were crossing oceans, and civilians were living through shortages and uncertainty. Yet the virus did not remain inside the story of battle. It moved beyond the front lines into remote settlements, island communities, northern outposts, and towns that had never heard a gun fired in anger. In some places, it arrived with returning troops. In others, it came by train, ship, mail carrier, or ordinary visitor. Its speed revealed something unsettling about the modern age. The world had become connected enough for a respiratory disease to travel farther than many armies could march. Families woke to a danger that seemed to appear from nowhere. Doctors faced crowded wards with few reliable tools. The pandemic showed that distance was no longer the protection it had once seemed to be. Human movement had quietly become a global pathway. Quarantine began as a waiting period for ships at sea. Long before anyone could identify bacteria or viruses, port cities understood that ships could carry invisible danger. A vessel might arrive with spices, cloth, grain, or passengers, yet also bring a disease that could pass into crowded streets. Officials began holding ships away from the city until enough time had passed to reveal whether sickness was aboard. Crews waited in harbors or on nearby islands while authorities watched for signs of illness. Cargo could be aired, inspected, or delayed. These rules were practical rather than scientific, but they were based on close observation. Cities that depended on trade had to balance profit against survival. Closing every port would ruin them. Opening every gate could devastate them. So they created a pause between arrival and entry. That pause became one of the earliest organized public health tools. It turned uncertainty into procedure and fear into a system that could be repeated. Some pandemics spread fastest along humanity's busiest trade routes. The same routes that carried prosperity could also carry disaster. Roads, rivers, sea lanes, and market networks brought distant communities into contact with one another. Merchants moved goods across regions, and diseases sometimes followed the same human pathways. A pathogen did not need intention. It needed movement. A single infected traveler could board a ship, share a lodging house, or visit a marketplace before anyone realized a chain of transmission had begun. Trade routes also gathered people in dense hubs. Warehouses, docks, inns, and city gates became points where strangers met briefly, then separated in many directions. This made commerce powerful and vulnerable at the same time. The more successful a route became, the more useful it could be to a spreading disease. Pandemics reveal the hidden map beneath civilization. They show that exchange is never only economic. It is biological too, because every journey carries the living body that makes the journey possible. Cholera helped cities discover that clean water could save millions. Cholera was terrifying because it could empty a healthy body of fluid with shocking speed. Outbreaks seemed to strike neighborhoods suddenly, and for a long time, people misunderstood why. The answer was often not in the air. It was in the water. When human waste contaminated wells, pumps, or river supplies, the disease could reach households through something people trusted every day. The realization changed urban life. Clean water was no longer simply a comfort. It became a shield. Cities began to see pipes, drains, filtration systems, and sewers as life-saving infrastructure. Engineers became unexpected allies of medicine. A street with safer water could become healthier than one with better doctors. This lesson reshaped the modern city. It showed that prevention could happen before anyone felt sick. It also proved that public health sometimes depends on ordinary systems working properly beneath the ground, out of sight, serving everyone at once. The plague of Justinian shook one of history's greatest empires. In the 6th century, the Eastern Roman world was ruled by an emperor with enormous ambition. Justinian sought to restore imperial glory, rebuild cities, and project power across the Mediterranean. Then, plague struck. It reached Constantinople, one of the most important cities of its age, and the impact was staggering. Chroniclers described bodies overwhelming normal burial practices and daily life collapsing under the pressure of mass death. The empire did not vanish at once, but its strength was weakened at a critical moment. Armies needed soldiers. Farms needed workers. Taxes depended on living communities. When disease tore through the population, every part of imperial life felt the strain. Historians still debate exactly how much the outbreak changed the empire's long future, but its arrival was undeniably severe. It reminds us that even the most organized states remain biological societies. Their walls, laws, and armies still depend on breath. Pandemics have often changed medicine faster than peaceful centuries could. Crisis has a way of forcing questions that comfort allows people to postpone. During major outbreaks, old explanations are tested brutally. Treatments that seem wise in theory must face the evidence of crowded wards and rising deaths. When they fail, doctors, nurses, officials, and researchers are pushed toward new methods. Pandemics have accelerated record-keeping, hospital organization, laboratory science, sanitation, vaccination, and emergency planning. They have also made societies confront the value of prevention. The lesson is rarely easy. Knowledge often advances because people are desperate to stop suffering that is already underway. A new idea might spread first because it works in practice, even before everyone accepts the theory behind it. Over time, those urgent discoveries can become normal medicine. The thermometer, the map, the microscope, and the public health report all gained power through necessity. In that sense, pandemics have served as harsh teachers with lessons no one wished to learn. Invisible microbes have redirected wars, economies, and entire civilizations. History often remembers kings, generals, inventions, and treaties. Yet some of its deepest turns were shaped by organisms no one could see for most of human existence. A microbe can weaken an army before a battle begins. It can close markets, empty workshops, frighten travelers, and interrupt harvests. It can change the price of labor, the movement of people, and the confidence of rulers. This is why pandemics belong inside history, not outside it. They do not arrive as background noise. They enter the machinery of society. When enough people fall ill, every human system begins to reveal its dependence on health. Ships need crews. Courts need clerks. Families need caregivers. Food needs hands to plant and gather it. A tiny organism can expose the living foundations beneath power. The astonishing truth is that civilization has always been partly negotiated with microbes, even when humans believed they were acting alone. Humanity's greatest pandemic weapon has always been shared knowledge. No single person can see a pandemic clearly from one doorway. The picture only forms when observations are gathered and compared. Someone notices an unusual fever. Someone else records where it appeared. Another person tracks who had contact with whom. A laboratory identifies a cause. A community learns how to protect its most vulnerable members. This chain of knowledge can move faster than fear when people trust it. The most powerful tool is not one invention. It is the act of connecting what many people know. During outbreaks, information can save time, and time can save lives. A warning from one city can prepare another. A discovery in one hospital can change practice elsewhere. The sharing must be careful, honest, and clear, because false confidence can be dangerous. Still, every major improvement in pandemic response has depended on people passing useful truth forward. Knowledge becomes protection when it is allowed to travel. The word quarantine comes from 40 days of isolation. The origin of the word carries the memory of medieval caution. In Italian, 40 giorni means 40 days, and that span became tied to the practice of holding ships and travelers apart before allowing entry. The number had religious and cultural resonance, but it also gave authorities a clear rule. People living in vulnerable port cities needed a fixed period that could be understood, enforced, and repeated. The practice grew from experience in an age when plague could arrive without warning and spread before anyone knew its cause. 40 days was not chosen through modern microbiology, yet it became a practical boundary between danger and admission. The word survived because the idea survived. When disease threatens a community, separation can interrupt the path from one body to another. Today, the length may change with the infection, but the ancient concept remains recognizable. Language itself preserves the old fear of arrival. Medieval plague doctors wore masks shaped like strange bird beaks. The famous costume looks almost theatrical now, but it came from a serious attempt to survive danger. The beaked mask was filled with aromatic materials such as herbs or spices, because many physicians believed disease spread through poisoned air. The long shape held those scents in front of the nose. The rest of the outfit could include a waxed coat, gloves, boots, and a broad hat. It created distance between doctor and patient at a time when touching the sick carried real risk. The theory behind the mask was wrong in important ways, yet the instinct toward barrier protection was not meaningless. It shows medicine caught between observation and misunderstanding. People could see that proximity mattered, even if they did not know why. The image endures because it captures a haunting moment in medical history. It is fear made visible, dressed as science before science had the tools it needed. The Antonine Plague haunted Rome during its imperial height. Rome in the 2nd century seemed vast, wealthy, and formidable. Its roads connected provinces, its armies guarded frontiers, and its cities displayed imperial confidence. Then a devastating outbreak appeared during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. Many historians suspect it may have been smallpox or measles, though certainty is impossible from surviving descriptions. Whatever the cause, the disease spread through a world built for movement. Soldiers, traders, officials, and messengers helped connect distant regions of the empire. Reports describe fever, skin eruptions, and heavy mortality. The outbreak struck not a weak society on the edge of collapse, but a powerful one at a peak of influence. That is what makes it so revealing. Strength did not make Rome immune to biological disruption. The empire could command legions and build monumental works, yet it still depended on the health of ordinary bodies. The epidemic exposed vulnerability inside grandeur. Ancient armies sometimes carried disease farther than their weapons reached. An army was more than a fighting force. It was a moving crowd with animals, supplies, waste, wounds, and exhaustion. Soldiers slept close together, drank from uncertain water sources, and marched through unfamiliar environments. Under those conditions, disease could become a companion to conquest. Sometimes it harmed the army itself, before it harmed an enemy. At other times, troops carried infections into places that had not yet encountered them. Camps could become breeding grounds for fever. Sieges could turn deadly because hunger and contamination weakened everyone trapped nearby. Ancient commanders understood losses from sickness, even if they lacked modern explanations. Many campaigns were shaped by illness as much as strategy. A battle might be remembered for courage or tactics, while disease had already decided who was strong enough to stand. The reach of an army was therefore never only military. It was biological, carried in breath, water, and fatigue. Smallpox scars once marked survivors across every level of society. To survive smallpox was often to carry its memory in the skin. The disease could leave deep pitted marks, especially on the face, where they remained visible for life. Those scars crossed boundaries of wealth and rank. A laborer, a noblewoman, a soldier, or a monarch could all be marked by the same infection. In portraiture, artists sometimes softened or omitted the evidence. In daily life, it could not be so easily hidden. The marks told a story without words. They showed that the person had endured a dangerous illness and lived. In some settings, survival could even matter socially, because a scarred person might be seen as less likely to catch the disease again. Yet the marks could also shape beauty, marriage prospects, self-image, and public identity. Smallpox did not end when fever passed. For many survivors, it remained present every time they met another person's gaze. Edward Jenner's vaccine began with milkmaids and cowpox. The story began with a rural observation that sounded almost like folklore. People noticed that milkmaids who had caught cowpox often seemed protected from smallpox. Cowpox was usually milder in humans, but it appeared to train the body against something far more dangerous. Edward Jenner took that idea seriously enough to test it in the late 18th century. His work did not emerge from nowhere. It built on older practices and local knowledge, especially the experience of people who worked closely with cattle. What made Jenner's contribution powerful was the way he connected observation to a repeatable medical method. The word vaccine itself comes from vacca, the Latin word for cow. That origin is remarkable. One of the most important ideas in medical history began not in a grand laboratory, but in a countryside relationship between humans, animals, and careful noticing. From that beginning grew a revolution in prevention. Variolation gave some communities protection long before modern vaccines existed. Before vaccination, people in different parts of the world developed a risky but sometimes effective way to reduce the danger of smallpox. Variolation involved deliberately exposing someone to material from a smallpox case, often through the skin or nose. The hope was that the person would develop a milder illness, then become protected against a more severe future infection. The practice carried real danger because it could cause serious disease and could start new outbreaks. Yet for many families, the risk seemed worth facing when the natural infection was so deadly. Variolation moved through cultures by trade, diplomacy, testimony, and debate. It forced people to consider a startling idea. A controlled encounter with disease might prevent a worse encounter later. That idea was difficult, frightening, and powerful. It prepared the ground for later breakthroughs by proving that the immune system could be guided even before anyone knew its inner workings. The Black Death reshaped labor, wages, and power across Europe. After the plague's immense mortality, the balance between landowners and workers shifted in ways that frightened elites. Fields still needed planting. Animals still needed tending. Buildings still needed repair. Yet there were fewer people available to do the work. Survivors could sometimes bargain in ways their parents never could. Wages rose in certain places, and workers moved in search of better tows. Authorities tried to resist these changes through laws that limited pay or restricted mobility. Those efforts reveal how disruptive the new conditions felt. The old assumption that laborers would remain fixed in place had been shaken. Economic pressure moved through manor houses, village courts, and urban workshops. It also helped feed social tension, because people who had endured catastrophe were less willing to accept every older demand. The disease itself did not argue for reform. But by changing the number of living workers, it altered the power of their voices. Many medieval people blamed bad air before germs were understood. To people without microscopes, the idea of poisoned air made sense. Disease often seemed to spread through neighborhoods, streets, or households, and foul smells were easy to notice. Rotting waste, stagnant water, crowded rooms, and decaying bodies all appeared connected to sickness. The miasma theory claimed that harmful vapors could enter the body and cause illness. It was wrong about the true nature of infection, but it was not foolish. People were trying to explain patterns with the evidence available to their senses. The theory also encouraged some useful actions. Cleaning streets, removing waste, improving drainage, and avoiding foul places could reduce certain risks, even when the reasoning was incomplete. This is one of the fascinating turns in medical history. A mistaken explanation could still push society toward better sanitation. Medieval people were not simply ignorant. They were observing closely from inside a world that had not yet revealed its smallest agents. London's plague outbreaks were recorded in weekly bills of mortality. In early modern London, death was counted with grim regularity. Parish clerks gathered information about burials, and the results were printed in weekly reports known as bills of mortality. These sheets listed causes of death as they were understood at the time, including plague. For ordinary readers, they offered a frightening measure of the city's condition. A rising number could send fear through households and businesses. A falling number could bring cautious relief. The records were imperfect because diagnosis was not modern and reporting depended on local systems. Even so, they created one of the most important habits in public health. They turned private tragedies into a visible pattern. Once deaths were counted week by week, people could see an outbreak as something with shape and movement. The bills helped citizens and officials watch the pulse of a city under threat. They were early data, printed in the shadow of grief. The Great Plague of London ended before science fully explained it. In 1665, London lived under a terrible pressure. Houses with sickness inside were marked. Watchmen guarded doors. Carts moved through the streets to collect the dead. People fled if they had money, while many of the poorest had no choice but to remain. Then, after months of dread, the outbreak began to fade. People later searched for a single dramatic reason. Some pointed to cold weather. Others remembered the Great Fire that followed in 1666. The truth is less simple. The epidemic was already declining before the fire burned through the city. The deeper cause lay in shifting patterns of infection, season, population movement, and the living conditions of rats and fleas. London survived, but it did not truly understand what had happened. That is what makes the ending so haunting. The city emerged from catastrophe before it had the scientific language to explain its end deliverance. Rats were only part of plague's complicated journey through cities. The popular image is simple. Rats arrive, plague follows, and people die. The real story is far more tangled. Urban outbreaks involved animals, insects, buildings, trade, climate, and human behavior. Black rats could carry infected fleas, but they were not acting alone. Their lives were tied to grain stores, docks, cellars, kitchens, and crowded neighborhoods. Fleas moved between hosts when their usual animals died. People helped create the conditions without knowing it. They stored food in ways that drew rodents close. They lived in houses where walls and floors gave small creatures hidden paths. They transported goods that could shelter stowaways. In some settings, other animals may also have played roles. The plague was not a single villain moving through a city. It was a chain of opportunities. Each link depended on contact. Once you see that, an outbreak becomes less like a sudden curse and more like a living system finding every open door. Fleas helped Yersinia pestis move between animals and humans. A flea is tiny enough to overlook, yet it can stand at the center of a historical catastrophe. When it feeds on an infected animal, the plague bacterium can multiply inside its digestive tract. In certain conditions, this interferes with feeding. The insect bites again and again, trying to take blood, while bacteria are pushed into the wound. That process can carry infection into a new host. In a crowded city with many rodents and people living close together, such small bites could have enormous consequences. The frightening part is the scale difference. A creature smaller than a grain of rice could help move a disease that changed kingdoms. Nobody in medieval streets could have seen that mechanism. They saw fever, swellings, and sudden death. The true courier was nearly invisible. History often turns on grand decisions, but here it turned on the feeding habits of an insect hidden in bedding, clothing, and fur. Plague bacteria can still survive today in wild animal populations. It is tempting to think of plague as a medieval horror that ended with old cities and old fears. Yet the organism has never fully disappeared. In parts of the world, it persists in wildlife reservoirs. Rodents and their fleas can maintain it in natural cycles, often far from human attention. Prairie dogs, ground squirrels, marmots, and other animals can be involved depending on the region. Most people will never encounter it, and modern antibiotics can treat cases when they are recognized early. Still, its survival changes how we understand the past. The plague is not a ghost. It is an ecological reality. It waits inside relationships between animals, insects, soil conditions, seasons, and landscapes. Occasionally, human contact with those systems creates risk. This continuity is astonishing. The same kind of pathogen that terrified ancient and medieval societies still exists beneath open skies today, not as a legend, but as a living part of nature. The third plague pandemic began in Asia and circled the globe. In the 19th century, plague re-emerged on a vast international scale. It spread from regions of China into major port cities, then traveled through the networks of empire and trade. Steamships, crowded harbors, and expanding global commerce gave the disease pathways earlier centuries could not have imagined. This pandemic did not belong to castles and medieval lanes. It belonged to telegrams, laboratories, colonial ports, newspapers, and modern shipping. Cases appeared in places linked by trade rather than by simple geography. Authorities struggled to respond while merchants feared disruption. Public health officers inspected ships, watched neighborhoods, and argued over measures that affected livelihoods. The outbreak also unfolded at a moment when bacteriology was becoming powerful. For the first time, scientists could search for the specific organism behind the disease while a global pandemic was still happening. It was an old terror moving through a new world, and modern science had to catch up in real time. Hong Kong became central to identifying the plague bacterium. In 1894, Hong Kong was struck during a major plague outbreak. The city became a tense meeting point for suffering, colonial administration, crowded housing, and emerging laboratory science. Into the scene came researchers determined to find the cause. The conditions were difficult, and the stakes were enormous. People were dying, officials were anxious, and scientists were racing to identify the agent behind a disease feared for centuries. Laboratory work during the outbreak helped reveal the bacterium responsible. That discovery transformed plague from a mysterious force into something that could be studied directly. Once the organism could be seen, grown, compared, and named, the disease became less mythic. It did not become harmless, but it became knowable. Hong Kong's role matters because it shows a turning point in the history of medicine. A city in crisis became a place where one of humanity's oldest terrors was finally brought under the lens. Alexander Yersin found the microbe behind bubonic plague. The discovery was made under pressure, with death unfolding around the investigation. Alexander Yersin worked in Hong Kong during the outbreak of 1894, examining material from victims and searching for the true cause. In the laboratory, he identified a tiny organism associated with the disease. This finding helped shift plague from fearful speculation into modern bacteriology. It also connected human cases with infected animals, which opened new ways of understanding transmission. The bacterium was later named in his honor. That name preserves a scientific moment when observation broke through centuries of confusion. Yerson's work did not end plague by itself. People still needed surveillance, sanitation, treatment, and public cooperation. But naming the enemy changed the nature of the fight. A disease that had once been explained through air, punishment, astrology, or rumor was now linked to a specific living cause. That is one of science's great powers. It can turn dread into a target. Some plague cemeteries now help scientists read ancient DNA. Burial grounds created during outbreaks can become unexpected archives. At the time, they were places of grief and urgency. Centuries later, they can hold biological clues that no written record preserved. Scientists sometimes examine teeth because blood vessels inside them can trap traces of pathogens during life. Under careful laboratory conditions, fragments of ancient DNA can be recovered and compared with modern strains. This work allows researchers to ask remarkable questions. Which pathogen was present? How did it relate to later outbreaks? Did it evolve over time? The dead cannot tell their stories in words, but their remains can still speak through molecules. This does not reduce them to specimens. It can restore truth to events that were misunderstood or poorly recorded. A mass grave becomes more than evidence of tragedy. It becomes a library of infection, migration, and human vulnerability. Through it, science reads history at a scale smaller than dust. Teeth can preserve traces of pandemic pathogens for centuries. A tooth looks hard and silent, but it can protect secrets from deep time. During illness, microbes or their genetic material may enter the bloodstream. The inner chamber of a tooth has blood supply during life, and after death it is sealed by durable enamel and dentine. This makes it a remarkable container for ancient evidence. Archaeologists and geneticists can sometimes recover tiny fragments from people who died hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Those fragments help identify infections that written sources describe only vaguely. A chronicler might mention fever or swellings. A tooth can reveal a specific organism. That changes history from guesswork into something closer to diagnosis. It also lets scientists trace how pathogens moved across regions and changed through generations. The intimacy of it is striking. A small part of one person's body can preserve evidence of a vast event, keeping a microscopic memory long after names have vanished. Ancient skeletons have revealed plague was older than once believed. For a long time, many people associated plague mainly with famous historical disasters. Ancient DNA has widened that view dramatically. Researchers have found evidence of plague bacteria in remains from prehistoric periods, long before the best-known medieval outbreaks. These discoveries suggest that human beings and plague have been entangled across a much deeper timeline. Early forms of the bacterium may not have behaved exactly like later strains. Some genetic features connected with flea transmission appear to have developed over time. That means the disease itself has a history. It changed as human societies changed. As communities grew, moved, traded, and lived with animals, new opportunities opened for infection. Skeletons from ancient graves can therefore reveal not only who died, but how a pathogen was becoming more dangerous. The past grows larger through this evidence. Plague is not only a medieval event. It is part of a long evolutionary conversation between microbes and human life. The Justinian plague may have returned in waves for generations. The first shock in the 6th century was devastating, but it was not necessarily the end. Historical sources suggest repeated outbreaks over a long period. That pattern matters because a single epidemic can wound a society, while recurring waves can keep reopening the wound. Communities might begin to recover, then face renewed loss. Farms could regain workers, then lose them again. Trade could restart, then falter. Families could rebuild, then be struck once more. Repetition changes the psychology of a crisis. It makes uncertainty part of ordinary life. It also makes the historical impact harder to measure because damage accumulates unevenly over decades. Some regions may have been hit severely. Others may have been spared or affected later. This is why historians debate the plague's role in the fate of the Eastern Roman world. A returning disease is not one event. It is a pressure that keeps arriving, each time finding a changed society. Pandemic waves can behave like echoes across time and geography. A pandemic rarely moves as one smooth line. It can rise in one region, fade, then appear elsewhere with new force. Later, it may return to places that believed the worst had passed. This wave pattern can happen for many reasons. Human movement changes. Seasons shift. Public behavior relaxes or tightens. Immunity grows in one population while another remains vulnerable. A pathogen may also move into fresh networks of contact. To people living through it, each wave can feel like a separate disaster. From a wider view, the waves are connected parts of one unfolding event. They reveal how diseases interact with human timing. A harvest, a festival, a migration, a school term, or a military movement can alter the rhythm. This is why the history of pandemics is not just about biology. It is about tempo. Disease moves through human calendars, and its echoes are shaped by the way people gather, separate, and return. Some outbreaks faded because the vulnerable population had already changed. When an outbreak burns through a community, it does not leave the same community behind. Many of the most susceptible people may have died, recovered, departed, or become isolated. Others may have gained some protection after infection. Social habits may also shift under pressure. People avoid gatherings, leave crowded areas, or become more cautious with contact. As a result, the pathogen finds fewer easy paths. This can make an outbreak decline even before anyone understands the mechanism. To observers in earlier centuries, the fading could seem mysterious or providential. In reality, the disease had changed the landscape it was moving through. The population was no longer biologically or socially identical to the one it first entered. This is a sobering idea. The end of an outbreak may not mean the danger became gentle. It may mean the easiest opportunities were exhausted. Survival itself can alter the route of a disease. The 1918 flu struck young adults with unusual force. Influenza usually causes the greatest concern for the very young, the elderly, and those already weakened. The pandemic that erupted near the end of the First World War broke that expectation in a disturbing way. Many victims were in the prime of life. Young adults who should have been among the strongest became severely ill. Researchers still study why this happened. One possibility involves powerful immune reactions that damaged the body while trying to fight infection. Another involves earlier exposure patterns that left some age groups with less useful protection. The setting also mattered. Large numbers of young people were gathered in military camps, transport ships, factories, and crowded cities. The result was a mortality pattern that shocked families and institutions. It took parents, workers, nurses, soldiers, and new spouses. Its tragedy was not only the number of deaths, it was the way it reached into the age group societies expected to carry the future. Wartime censorship helped the Spanish flu earn a misleading name. During the First World War, countries involved in the fighting had strong reasons to control bad news. Reports of severe illness could damage morale, reveal weakness, or unsettle the public. Newspapers in combatant nations often faced restrictions. Spain, however, was neutral, so its press could report more openly on the outbreak. When the Spanish king became ill and newspapers covered the story, many readers elsewhere associated the disease with Spain. The name stuck, even though the pandemic did not originate there. This is a powerful lesson in how information shapes memory. A label can survive long after experts know it is misleading. A name tells us less about where the virus began than about how news traveled during war. It also shows how censorship can distort public understanding. When some voices are silenced and others remain visible, history may attach blame to the place that spoke, rather than the place where danger first appeared. Spain was not where the Spanish flu began. The true origin of that influenza pandemic remains debated. Researchers have proposed several possible starting points, including locations in North America, Europe, and Asia. The evidence is complicated because surveillance was limited, wartime reporting was uneven, and early cases may have looked like ordinary flu. What is clear is that Spain became linked to the name for reasons of visibility, not proof. This distinction matters. Disease names can shape prejudice, memory, and political reaction. When an outbreak is tied too strongly to one place, people may imagine a certainty that science does not support. In reality, the first recognized reports are not always the first infections. A virus can circulate quietly before anyone notices its larger pattern. The story of this mistaken label reminds us that pandemics are not only biological events. They are naming events too. The words chosen in confusion can outlive the confusion itself, sometimes for more than a century. Military camps helped influenza move through crowded young populations. A training camp during wartime was an ideal environment for respiratory disease. Recruits arrived from many regions, bringing different prior exposures with them. They slept in close quarters, drilled together, ate together, and shared the strain of intense physical demands. If one man became sick, the virus had many nearby bodies to enter. Movement then multiplied the problem. Soldiers were transferred between camps, sent to ports, placed aboard ships, and deployed overseas. Each journey created another bridge. Military medicine could treat wounds and organize hospitals, but influenza moved too quickly through ordinary breathing, coughing, and close contact. The tragedy is that the very system built to mobilize strength also mobilized vulnerability. Young men gathered for war became part of a global transmission network. The virus did not need to understand armies. It simply used the crowded arrangements that armies required. In this way, military organization helped turn local illness into a worldwide crisis. Masks were common in some cities during the 1918 flu. In several communities, face coverings became part of public life during the pandemic. People wore gauze masks on streets, in workplaces, on public transport, and inside shops. Officials promoted them as a way to reduce the spread of infectious droplets. Some citizens accepted them as a civic duty. Others found them uncomfortable, doubted their value, or resisted being told what to do. The masks themselves were not like many modern versions. Materials varied, and quality was inconsistent. Still, the practice shows that public health debates we think of as recent have deep roots. People were already arguing about personal freedom, social responsibility, enforcement, and scientific evidence. Photographs from that period can feel startling because they look familiar. A century disappears for a moment. The faces are different, but the questions remain recognizable. How much inconvenience should one person accept to protect another? During that pandemic, the answer was contested in real time. San Francisco held mask debates more than a century ago. San Francisco became one of the most memorable examples of public disagreement over masking during the influenza pandemic. At first, many residents complied with rules requiring face coverings in public. Officials framed the measure as a patriotic act that protected the community. Yet resistance grew, especially when mandates returned after restrictions had been lifted. Some people believed the rules were unnecessary. Others objected to fines or enforcement. A group known as the Anti-Mask League formed and challenged the policy. This episode is fascinating because it sounds modern, yet it unfolded in 1919. The arguments were not identical to later debates, but the emotional structure feels familiar. People weighed risk against autonomy. Officials tried to guide behavior under uncertainty. Citizens questioned whether rules were fair, effective, or overreaching. The city's experience reminds us that pandemic response has always been social as well as medical. A mask can become a symbol long before the science feels settled. Some cities reduced flu deaths by acting early and firmly. During the influenza pandemic, timing became a matter of life and death. Cities that introduced measures before hospitals were overwhelmed often fared better than those that waited. These actions could include closing schools, limiting public gatherings, staggering business hours, and discouraging crowding. The exact results varied, but the broader lesson was clear. Delay gave the virus a head start. Early action slowed transmission while there were still fewer chains to break. This did not make life easy. Restrictions disrupted work, worship, entertainment, and education. Leaders faced pressure to keep daily life moving. Yet data from the period later showed that hesitation could be costly. A city's death curve was not only a medical outcome, it was also a record of decisions made under uncertainty. That is what makes this history so powerful. It shows that public health is often a race against exponential growth, where a few days can matter enormously. Philadelphia's parade became a famous warning in pandemic history. In September of 1918, Philadelphia allowed a massive public parade to proceed. It was organized to support war bonds, and crowds packed the streets. At the same time, influenza was already present in the city. Within days, hospitals were overwhelmed by a surge of illness. The event became one of the clearest examples of how a large gathering can accelerate transmission during a respiratory outbreak. The tragedy was not only that people gathered, it was that officials had warnings and still allowed the celebration to continue. Public morale and wartime fundraising were treated as urgent priorities. The virus exploited that choice without hesitation. The aftermath was severe enough to become a lasting case study. It is remembered because it makes an invisible process easy to understand. One day of crowding can reshape the weeks that follow. A parade meant to show civic strength became a lesson in how quickly confidence can become vulnerability. St. Louis responded differently, and its death curve looked different. Another American city made a contrasting choice during the same pandemic. St. Louis moved quickly to limit public gatherings after influenza appeared. Schools, theaters, and other crowded venues were closed early. This did not spare the city completely, and residents still endured hardship. But compared with places that delayed, its mortality pattern was less explosive. The phrase death curve may sound cold, yet behind it were families, nurses, workers, and hospital beds. A flatter curve meant fewer people becoming severely ill at once. It gave care systems more room to function. The contrast with harder-hit cities became an important public health lesson. It showed that local decisions could alter the shape of a pandemic, even without vaccines or antiviral drugs. The response in St. Louis is remembered because it turned caution into measurable survival. It offers a simple but profound idea. In an outbreak, speed can be a form of compassion. The 1918 flu came in several devastating waves. The pandemic did not strike once and then vanish. It returned in phases, with the later wave in 1918 becoming especially deadly in many places. This pattern created confusion and dread. Communities that had endured one outbreak could not assume safety. A second rise could be worse than the first. Scientists have studied why the waves differed. Possible explanations include viral change, seasonal conditions, population movement, wartime crowding, and shifts in public behavior. For people at the time, the effect was brutally simple. Relief could be temporary. Funerals could begin again. Hospitals could fill again. Newspapers could publish grim counts again. The wave pattern also complicated memory, because the pandemic unfolded differently from place to place. Some towns remembered a brief disaster. Others remembered repeated blows. Its structure teaches an enduring lesson. A pandemic is not a single moment. It is a changing event, and the danger can return wearing the same name. Influenza viruses can change quickly enough to surprise the world. Influenza is not a fixed enemy. Its genetic material can accumulate changes as it spreads. Sometimes these changes are small, which is why seasonal flu vaccines must be updated regularly. In other cases, a more dramatic shift can occur when different influenza viruses exchange genetic segments. This can create a strain with a combination the human immune system does not recognize well. That possibility is one reason influenza receives such close attention from scientists. It is familiar enough to seem ordinary, yet flexible enough to become extraordinary. Birds, pigs, and humans can all be part of its wider story, depending on the strain. The unsettling fact is that the virus does not need to become intelligent to outmaneuver expectation. Replication, mutation, and opportunity are enough. A microscopic change can alter global risk. Influenza reminds us that the natural world is always experimenting, and most of its experiments happen long before anyone notices. Bird flu reminds scientists that animal viruses deserve careful watching. Many dangerous human infections begin with animals. Avian influenza is watched closely because wild birds can carry many flu strains, and domestic poultry can bring those viruses into closer contact with people. Most bird flu viruses do not spread easily between humans. That is reassuring, but not a reason for complacency. The concern lies in adaptation. If a virus gains changes that help it infect mammals more efficiently, the risk picture can shift. Surveillance, therefore, becomes a kind of early listening. Scientists test birds, monitor outbreaks on farms, study genetic sequences, and watch unusual infections in people or other mammals. This work may seem distant from ordinary life, but it is one of the ways future pandemics might be prevented. The goal is to notice danger before it becomes widespread. Animal health, farming practices, wildlife movement, and human medicine are connected more tightly than they first appear. Bird flu makes that connection visible. The word pandemic describes spread, not how frightening a disease feels. A disease does not become a pandemic because it is the deadliest imaginable. It earns that description because it spreads across countries or continents and affects large numbers of people. This matters because the word can cause confusion. Some pandemics are extremely severe. Others are milder for most individuals, but still disruptive because so many people are infected. Severity and spread are related, but they are not the same thing. A highly lethal disease that remains contained may be terrifying without becoming pandemic. A less lethal infection can become historically significant if it reaches enough communities at once. Understanding the term helps people think more clearly during crises. It shifts attention from emotion to pattern. Where is the disease moving? How many populations are involved? Is transmission sustained in multiple regions? The word is not a judgment of fear. It is a map word. It describes the scale of movement across the human world. An epidemic can become global when travel connects distant outbreaks. An epidemic is often understood as a rise of disease in a particular region or population. The leap toward global spread happens when separate places become linked by movement. A traveler may leave before symptoms appear. A crew member may become ill between ports. A business route may connect cities faster than local officials can react. Modern travel compresses distance in a way earlier societies could not imagine. But the principle is old. Caravans, ships, roads, and migration have always connected outbreaks. What changes is speed. The faster people move, the less time geography gives us. Local fires can become connected flames when enough pathways exist between them. This is why surveillance at one place can matter to many others. A disease event is no longer only local once it has access to a network. The transformation from regional outbreak to worldwide threat is not magic. It is movement, repeated until distance stops protecting anyone. Steamships helped cholera cross oceans during the 19th century. The 19th century changed the tempo of travel. Steam power made ocean journeys more regular and predictable than wind alone. Ships could carry passengers, crews, goods, and contaminated water between ports on tighter schedules. Cholera, which spreads through fecal contamination of food or water, found opportunities in this moving world. A ship could leave one harbor before the danger was fully understood and arrive at another with illness already aboard. Port cities became anxious gateways. Officials inspected vessels, imposed delays, and feared the economic cost of interruption. Yet the disease kept revealing how closely maritime technology had linked human communities. Steamships did not create cholera, but they helped extend its reach. They belonged to an age proud of speed, industry, and connection. The same qualities that made them symbols of progress also made them useful to infection. It is a striking lesson. Every advance in movement creates new responsibilities for health. Cholera pandemics followed trade, migration, and imperial shipping lanes. Cholera's global history cannot be separated from the movement of people and power. As empires expanded and commerce intensified, ships and overland routes linked regions that had once been more separate. Soldiers, laborers, pilgrims, merchants, and migrants moved through systems shaped by economic ambition and imperial control. Waterborne disease could travel with them when sanitation failed. Ports became especially important because they gathered people from many directions and sent them onward again. The pattern of cholera spread therefore reflected the political world as much as the microbial one. It followed the routes humans built for profit, labor, governance, and movement. This makes cholera a revealing historical witness. It shows where people were connected, who was forced to move, which cities were crowded, and where infrastructure lagged behind expansion. The disease mapped inequality as it moved. It exposed the hidden costs of a world becoming more connected before it had learned how to keep that connection safe. John Snow traced cholera to a single London water pump. In 1854, a deadly outbreak struck part of Soho. Many believed the disease came from foul air, but John Snow suspected contaminated water. He studied where victims lived and noticed a concentration around a public pump on Broad Street. His investigation combined medical reasoning with geography. The pattern mattered. People who drank from that pump were far more likely to become ill, while some nearby groups who used different water sources were spared. Snow persuaded local authorities to remove the pump handle. The outbreak was already changing. But the act became a symbol of a new way to think. Disease could be tracked through place, behavior, and exposure. A map could challenge a popular theory. A neighborhood mystery could reveal a hidden route of infection. The power of the story is not only the pump, it is the method. Snow showed that careful observation could find danger before the eye could see the microbe. The Broad Street pump became a landmark in epidemiology. The handle of that London pump became famous because it turned an invisible threat into something a community could act upon. In the Soho outbreak, families were not dying at random. Their cases formed a pattern around a shared water source. That pattern gave investigators a way to challenge the popular belief that cholera came from foul air. The pump itself was ordinary. It stood in a neighborhood where people came and went with buckets, unaware that a daily habit could carry danger into their homes. When the handle was removed, the act became larger than the local outbreak. It showed that disease could be studied by following behavior through a place. This changed the way people thought about evidence. A street corner could become a laboratory. A public object could become a clue. The pump is remembered because it made prevention feel practical. It showed that saving lives could begin with seeing the pattern clearly enough. Cholera helped prove that maps could reveal invisible danger. A map can seem simple, but in an outbreak it can become a powerful instrument. When cases are placed on streets and households, scattered tragedies begin to form a visible shape. During cholera investigations, this changed everything. Instead of relying only on theories, officials and doctors could ask where sickness clustered, which routes people used, and what they shared. A disease too small to see could reveal itself through geography. This was revolutionary because it moved medicine beyond the bedside. The city itself became part of the diagnosis. Walls, wells, pumps, drains, and neighborhoods mattered. Patterns could point toward a source before a laboratory confirmed the cause. The emotional force of this idea is striking. Every dot on such a map represented a person. Together, those dots became a message. They warned that danger had a location, and if danger had a location, it might be interrupted before it reached another home. Sewers became life-saving technology during the age of cholera. The modern sewer is not usually celebrated like a great discovery, yet it helped transform human survival. In rapidly growing cities, waste often collected in cesspits, gutters, rivers, and shallow drains. People lived close to their own contamination without fully realizing the risk. Cholera made that danger impossible to ignore. When outbreaks struck, reformers and engineers began to see that urban design could decide who lived and who died. New sewer systems carried waste away from homes and drinking supplies. They required money, planning, tunnels, labor, and political will. They also changed the meaning of public health. Protection was not only found in a doctor's bag, it could be built into brick, pipe, gradient, and flow. A well-designed sewer might save people who never knew it existed. That is its quiet marvel. It works by being forgotten. Beneath the street, hidden infrastructure became one of civilization's most effective defenses against disease. Clean water quietly became one of medicine's greatest breakthroughs. A glass of safe water can feel ordinary, but it represents one of the deepest victories in human history. For most of the past, people could not assume that water would nourish without risk. A clear stream or well might carry organisms capable of causing deadly illness. The breakthrough was not one dramatic moment. It came through filtration, protected sources, treatment systems, testing, and regulation. These changes reduced infections before symptoms began. That is why clean water belongs beside vaccines and antibiotics in the story of medicine. It prevents suffering at such a basic level that its success becomes invisible. Children grow up without diseases that once filled graveyards. Cities expand without every summer bringing the same terror. Hospitals face fewer patients because the danger never enters the body. The wonder is not only scientific, it is moral. Safe water turns protection into something shared, flowing through pipes into households regardless of whether anyone knows the science behind it. The miasma theory delayed understanding, yet improved sanitation still helped. The belief in harmful vapors was wrong about the true cause of many infections, but it changed cities in complicated ways. People who feared bad smells worked to remove filth from streets, drains, yards, and crowded districts. They believed they were clearing poisoned air. In some cases, they were also reducing contact with waste that carried real disease. This creates one of history's strange lessons. A mistaken theory can still lead to useful action when it targets conditions linked to danger. The problem was that it could also blind people to waterborne transmission, person-to-person spread, or specific microbial causes. Reform moved forward, but understanding lagged behind. Doctors and officials often argued fiercely because each side had evidence that seemed convincing from its viewpoint. The story is fascinating because progress did not arrive in a straight line. Public health advanced through partial truths, failed explanations, and practical improvements that worked better than people knew. Germ theory gave doctors a new way to fight pandemics. Once disease could be linked to specific microorganisms, medicine gained a sharper kind of sight. Illness was no longer only a disturbance of air, balance, or atmosphere. It could be caused by living agents that entered bodies, multiplied, and moved between hosts. This changed the questions doctors asked. How does the organism travel? Where does it survive? What breaks its path? The new framework reshaped surgery, childbirth, hospital cleaning, food safety, vaccination, and laboratory diagnosis. It also changed responsibility. If infection had roots, then human action could block them. Washing hands, sterilizing instruments, separating patients, and protecting water supplies became grounded in a powerful explanation. Germ theory did not solve everything at once. Many people resisted it, and many microbes remained difficult to control. But it transformed confusion into strategy. The invisible world became part of daily medicine. Once that happened, pandemics could be fought with methods aimed at their actual causes. Microscopes turned invisible causes into visible clues. The first time a researcher looked through a lens and saw a hidden living world, the boundaries of reality changed. Microscopes revealed that ordinary water, blood, sputum, and tissue could contain forms no unaided eye could detect. This mattered profoundly during the rise of modern infectious disease science. A physician could move from guessing about unseen causes to examining samples directly. The instrument did not speak for itself. People needed staining methods, careful technique, and ways to distinguish harmless organisms from dangerous ones. Still, the lens made a new kind of evidence possible. The patient's suffering could be connected to a shape, a stain, a colony, or a movement under glass. That connection made disease feel less like fate. It became something with structure. The microscope also humbled humanity. It showed that the world had always been crowded with life too small to notice. Some of that life had been shaping history all along. Public health became a science of patterns, places, and people. Individual medicine asks what is happening inside this body. Public health asks what is happening across a community. That shift is enormous. During outbreaks, the crucial clues often appear in numbers: neighborhoods, occupations, movements, and shared exposures. A single patient can reveal symptoms. A population can reveal transmission. This science grew from counting deaths, comparing households, mapping cases, investigating workplaces, and watching how behavior changed risk. It required a new kind of imagination. Health was not only personal, it was social. A crowded dwelling, unsafe water source, poorly ventilated room, or delayed warning could affect many lives at once. Public health, therefore, became practical and collective. It needed doctors, statisticians, inspectors, engineers, nurses, local leaders, and ordinary residents. Its power lies in seeing connections before they become overwhelming. A pattern noticed early can prevent a tragedy later. In that sense, public health is history's attempt to make compassion measurable and action timely. Contact tracing is older than smartphones and modern apps. The basic idea is beautifully simple. Find the people who may have been exposed, then reach them before the disease spreads farther. Long before digital tools, this work depended on memory, interviews, paper records, local knowledge, and persistence. A tracer might ask where someone had slept, worked, prayed, traveled, eaten, or visited. The work required tact because people were frightened, embarrassed, grieving, or suspicious. It also required speed. Each delay could allow new chains of infection to form. The method is powerful because it treats transmission as a series of human connections rather than an abstract force. Every contact is a possible fork in the road. One conversation can prevent several future infections. Yet the method also shows how intimate pandemic control can become. It enters the details of ordinary life. It asks people to remember moments they never thought would matter. In an outbreak, yesterday's meeting can become tomorrow's vital clue. Isolation once depended on guards, letters, and handwritten ledgers. Before telephones, databases, and rapid testing, separating the sick was a slow and human process. Officials had to identify households, mark doors, deliver instructions, and keep records by hand. Guards might be stationed to prevent movement. Food and supplies had to reach people who could not leave. Messages traveled by messenger or letter. Mistakes were common because names could be misspelled, addresses misunderstood, and symptoms hidden from fear. Isolation was never just a medical order. It was a social arrangement that affected income, reputation, family care, and trust in authority. The experience could feel protective to one neighbor and terrifying to another. For officials, ledgers became tools of control. For families, the same records could mean confinement and uncertainty. This older world reminds us how difficult outbreak response was before modern communication. Yet the essential challenge remains familiar. A community must slow disease while still treating isolated people as human beings who need support. Lazarettos held travelers before they could enter vulnerable cities. These quarantine stations stood at the uneasy edge between welcome and fear. A traveler might see the city ahead but be forced to wait outside it. Some lazarettos were built on islands. Others stood near ports or borders. They could house sailors, merchants, pilgrims, soldiers, or goods suspected of carrying contagion. Conditions varied widely. Some were organized with strict routines. Others were uncomfortable and resented. Their purpose was to protect urban populations without halting movement entirely. That balance made them important. Cities needed exchange, but they also feared the unseen dangers that exchange could bring. A lazaretto turned suspicion into architecture. It gave waiting a physical form. People slept, watched, worried, recovered, or proved healthy within its walls. The name itself carries a long history of disease, care, exclusion, and caution. These places remind us that pandemic control often begins at thresholds. Before someone enters, society asks what else may be entering with them. Venice became an early laboratory for organized quarantine. A maritime republic could not afford to ignore disease. Venice depended on ships, trade, visitors, and goods arriving from distant places. It also knew that a single infected arrival could threaten a dense and valuable city. This pressure encouraged officials to develop structured systems for delaying entry, inspecting travelers, and managing suspected contagion. Nearby islands became part of the city's protective strategy. Rules were not perfect, and they were shaped by politics as well as health. Still, Venice helped turn emergency reaction into administrative routine. That was a major step. It meant that disease prevention could be planned before a crisis reached the gates. Documents, officers, stations, and waiting periods became part of governance. The city's experience shows how public health often grows where risk meets necessity. Venice wanted openness because trade made it rich. It needed caution because openness made it vulnerable. Out of that tension came practices that influenced later quarantine systems. Ports often feared disease as much as piracy or storms. For centuries, the arrival of a ship brought possibility and anxiety together. It might carry rare goods, news, passengers, and profit. It might also carry fever. Port authorities watched the horizon with mixed feelings because danger did not always look dangerous. A vessel could seem orderly while sickness incubated below deck. Sailors might hide illness to avoid delay. Merchants might resist inspection because time meant money. Yet a careless decision could expose an entire city. This made health a central part of maritime security. Officials demanded bills of health, questioned captains, inspected crews, and sometimes forced ships to wait offshore. The fear was practical. A port was a doorway, and doorways need judgment. Storms could wreck a ship in one day. Pirates could steal cargo. Disease could enter quietly and spread long after the sails were lowered. That made it especially unsettling. The threat was not on the sea alone. It could step onto the dock. Trade could make cities wealthy and dangerously exposed. A thriving city attracts movement. Grain arrives. Cloth changes hands. Laborers come seeking wages. Merchants bring news and goods from far away. That movement creates opportunity, but it also increases contact between strangers. In pandemic history, prosperity and vulnerability often grew together. A city that sat at the center of exchange might have better markets, richer institutions, and broader influence. It also had more chances for infection to arrive. Crowded housing and busy marketplaces could then give a disease room to spread. This tension is one of the central truths of urban history. Isolation can protect, but it can also impoverish. Connection can enrich, but it can also expose. City leaders have always had to live with that trade-off. Their choices shaped quarantine rules, sanitation projects, reporting systems, and emergency restrictions. The story is compelling because it shows civilization as a bargain. Human beings gather to flourish, and gathering itself creates risk. Pilgrimage routes sometimes carried devotion and disease together. A pilgrimage is a journey of meaning. People leave home seeking blessing, forgiveness, healing, or closeness to the sacred. Yet large movements of people can also create paths for infection. Travelers may sleep in shared lodgings, drink from common sources, gather in crowded spaces, and return home along different routes. In earlier centuries, few understood the biological risk. The spiritual purpose was clear, while the microbial consequence remained hidden. This does not diminish the sincerity of pilgrimage. It reveals the complexity of human connection. The same journey that bound communities through faith could unintentionally link them through disease. Authorities sometimes responded by inspecting travelers, issuing health certificates, delaying movement, or imposing restrictions during outbreaks. These measures could be sensitive because they touched deeply held beliefs. Pandemic history often sits at this difficult intersection. People need meaning as well as safety. When devotion moves across distance, health systems must learn how to protect without contempt. The Hajj inspired major advances in international health cooperation. The annual pilgrimage to Mecca has long gathered people from many regions. In the age of steam travel and expanding empires, this movement became a central concern for global health officials. Outbreaks of cholera and other diseases raised urgent questions. How could pilgrims be protected? How could home communities be protected when travelers returned? No single government could manage the risk alone, because the journey crossed borders and seas. This helped push nations toward shared rules, reporting, maritime inspection, and quarantine arrangements. The process was imperfect and often shaped by colonial politics, but it marked an important step toward international public health. The Hajj showed that disease control could not remain only local. A gathering with worldwide reach required cooperation beyond one city or empire. It also forced officials to recognize mobility as a permanent feature of human life. People would continue to travel for faith. Health systems had to become capable of traveling with them. Measles devastated isolated communities after first contact with outsiders. Measles is so contagious that it can spread through the air with astonishing ease. In populations where it had circulated for generations, many adults had immunity from childhood infection. But in communities with no previous exposure, the virus could be catastrophic. When outsiders arrived, they sometimes brought measles into places where nearly everyone was susceptible. The result could be explosive transmission through families, villages, and islands. Children were especially vulnerable, but adults could suffer too because they lacked childhood immunity. The tragedy was intensified by social disruption. When many people became ill at once, there were fewer caregivers, less food gathering, and less ability to maintain daily life. To the affected communities, the disease could seem to arrive with terrifying speed and no familiar pattern. This history reminds us that immunity is not evenly distributed across the world. A virus that seems ordinary in one setting can become devastating in another when it meets a population biologically unprepared for it. Smallpox helped reshape the history of the Americas. After contact between the Old World and the New, smallpox became one of the most devastating forces in the Americas. The virus entered populations with no prior exposure, which meant immunity was almost absent. Its effects were not limited to mortality. It weakened communities at moments of political upheaval and military pressure. Leaders died. Families fractured. Food systems faltered. Knowledge keepers, artisans, farmers, and children were lost. European conquest cannot be explained by disease alone, but disease dramatically altered the balance of power. In some places, epidemics moved faster than armies or formal colonial control. Survivors faced not only grief, but a transformed world in which enemies, settlers, and missionaries arrived amid demographic collapse. This is one of the most painful truths in pandemic history. Microbes became part of conquest, even when no one fully understood them. The Americas were reshaped not only by weapons and treaties, but by viruses carried across an ocean. Disease often traveled ahead of armies during conquest. In several historical invasions, infection reached communities before the main military force did. This could happen through scouts, traders, refugees, enslaved people, allied groups, or earlier contact zones. By the time soldiers arrived, the affected society might already be weakened by sickness and mourning. Fields could be untended. Political leadership could be disrupted. defenses could be disorganized. This made conquest appear easier than it would have been against a healthy population. The pattern is deeply important because it complicates simple stories of victory. Military success was sometimes built on biological catastrophe that had begun before the battle. Invaders may not have planned this effect, but they benefited from it. For the people struck by disease, the experience must have been bewildering. A new illness appeared, then foreign power followed. Pandemic history therefore forces us to look beyond the battlefield. It asks what invisible events had already changed the conditions under which armies met. Indigenous populations suffered from pathogens they had never encountered before. When communities are isolated from a disease for many generations, they do not build the immune experience that repeated exposure can create. This became disastrous after sustained contact between continents. Indigenous peoples across the Americas and other regions faced infections introduced from elsewhere, including smallpox, measles, and influenza. These diseases spread through societies that had no inherited or acquired familiarity with them. The losses were enormous. Yet it is important to understand the human context. People did not die because their cultures were weak. They died because biology, history, and contact collided with brutal force. Epidemics were often followed by displacement, violence, forced labor, and social pressure, which made recovery even harder. Communities endured grief while also defending land, language, and identity. The scale of suffering can be difficult to hold in the mind. But remembering it matters. It restores the truth that pandemics can become instruments of historical transformation when they meet inequality and invasion. Cholera remains one of the most mysterious epidemics in history. In the 16th century, central Mexico was struck by a catastrophe remembered under a Nahuatl name meaning pestilence. It killed on a terrifying scale and followed earlier waves of disease and conquest. Descriptions mention fever, bleeding, weakness, and rapid death, but the exact cause has remained uncertain for centuries. That uncertainty gives the event a haunting place in medical history. It was vast, yet elusive. It devastated lives, yet resisted clear diagnosis. Part of the difficulty comes from the limits of historical records. Symptoms were described by observers who lacked modern categories. More than one disease may have been involved, and social conditions likely worsened the toll. Drought, hunger, forced labor, and disruption may have made bodies more vulnerable. The epidemic stands as a reminder that not every major pandemic has a settled name. Some of history's deadliest events remain partly hidden, waiting between written testimony, archaeology, climate evidence, and molecular science. Some historians still debate what caused Mexico's Cholera catastrophe. The question remains compelling because the evidence points in more than one direction. Researchers have considered viral hemorrhagic fever, salmonella infection, and other possible causes. Ancient DNA studies have found clues in some remains, but debate continues over whether those findings explain the full disaster. Symptoms recorded at the time may not fit neatly with one modern disease. Environmental stress also complicates the picture. Severe drought could have changed food supplies, rodent behavior, sanitation, and human vulnerability. Colonial disruption added another layer. People were living through forced changes in labor, settlement, and social structure. A pathogen moving through such conditions could become far more deadly. The debate matters because it shows how pandemic history is reconstructed from fragments. Scientists read bones and molecules. Historians read chronicles and tribute records. Climate researchers read tree rings. Each piece offers part of the story. The mystery remains powerful because it asks how disease, environment, and conquest combined. Yellow fever shaped cities, wars, and canal building plans. Yellow fever brought terror to warm regions and port cities for centuries. It could cause high fever, jaundice, bleeding, and sudden death. Outbreaks disrupted commerce and sent those who could afford it fleeing to safer ground. The disease influenced military campaigns because armies entering endemic regions could be devastated before achieving their goals. It also changed engineering dreams. Efforts to build a canal across Panama were haunted by mosquito-borne illness. Workers died in large numbers before transmission was understood and controlled. Once the mosquito connection became clear, public health measures became part of construction itself. Draining breeding sites, screening buildings, and reducing mosquito exposure helped make massive projects possible. Yellow fever therefore shaped more than hospitals. It shaped maps, strategy, migration, and infrastructure. A virus carried by a small insect could decide whether cities prospered, armies survived, and routes between oceans could be carved through tropical land. Mosquitoes made tropical disease a problem of environment and empire. For a long time, many outsiders believed tropical climates themselves produced certain fevers. The discovery that mosquitoes transmitted major diseases changed that understanding, but it also exposed a wider truth. Disease risk was tied to landscapes shaped by water, housing, labor, and power. Empires moved soldiers, administrators, and workers into regions where mosquito-borne infections were already part of local ecologies. Plantation systems, canal zones, military camps, and growing towns often created standing water and crowded living conditions. Mosquito control became a tool of imperial ambition as well as public health. It allowed some projects to continue while local populations still bore heavy burdens. This history is fascinating and uncomfortable. It shows that an insect can connect biology to politics. A mosquito bite might seem like a tiny private event, but in the past it helped shape colonial policy, labor systems, and the confidence of outsiders who believed they could remake environments to suit their plans. Walter Reed's team helped prove yellow fever spread through mosquitoes. At the turn of the 20th century, investigators in Cuba tested a dangerous idea with extraordinary consequences. Building on earlier work by Carlos Finley, Walter Reed's team examined whether yellow fever moved through mosquitoes rather than contaminated objects or air. Volunteers took part in experiments that would be considered ethically troubling by modern standards, though they were central to the evidence gathered at the time. The results supported mosquito transmission. This changed public health strategy dramatically. Instead of trying to disinfect everything touched by a patient, officials could focus on preventing mosquito bites and reducing breeding sites. That shift saved lives and altered the future of tropical medicine. The discovery also shows how science advances through chains of contribution. Finley proposed the mosquito theory years earlier. Reed's commission helped convince the wider medical world. Together, their work transformed a feared seasonal terror into a disease with a knowable root and a practical target. Malaria has influenced human history without always becoming a classic pandemic. Malaria is not usually discussed like plague or influenza because it often persists in regions rather than sweeping the globe in a single dramatic wave. Yet its historical power is immense. It has shaped settlement, agriculture, warfare, colonization, and human genetics. Armies entering malarial zones could lose more soldiers to fever than to combat. Wetlands, irrigation, and deforestation could change mosquito habitats and alter risk. Communities learned seasonal patterns, remedies, and avoidance strategies through hard experience. The disease also affected where outsiders could live safely, which influenced imperial expansion and resistance. Its impact was slow, repeated, and deeply woven into everyday life. That makes it less theatrical than some pandemics, but no less important. malaria shows that disease does not need one global explosion to change history. A persistent infection can act like a long pressure on civilization, bending choices over centuries through fever, absence, fear, and survival. Genetic traits can carry echoes of ancient disease pressure. Human DNA holds traces of battles our ancestors never wrote down. When a disease kills unevenly, traits that offer even partial protection can become more common over generations. This does not happen because evolution plans for health. It happens because people with certain inherited variations are more likely to survive and have children in specific environments. The result is a biological memory of past danger. Some genetic traits that help against one infection can also bring costs. This makes the story more complex than simple advantage. A variation may be protective in one region and harmful in another. It may help in childhood, but create risk under different circumstances. Pandemic and epidemic pressures therefore leave marks not only in chronicles and cemeteries, but in living bodies. Each genome is shaped by deep history. When scientists study these patterns, they're reading the afterimage of disease across generations, written in inheritance rather than ink. Sickle cell trait reflects a long struggle with malaria. In regions where malaria has been intense for many generations, one inherited trait became more common because it offered partial protection. People with one copy of the sickle cell variant are less likely to suffer the most severe forms of malaria. That advantage helped the trait persist in affected areas. But the same genetic change can cause sickle cell disease when a child inherits two copies. This creates one of the clearest and most poignant examples of evolutionary trade-off. A variation that protects some people from an ancient killer can bring serious illness to others. The story is not about perfection. It is about survival under pressure. Malaria shaped the human genome by making certain risks worth carrying at the population level. For families living with sickle cell disease, that history is not abstract. It is present in pain, care, resilience, and medical research. The past continues inside the blood. Tuberculosis spread slowly, yet shaped art, cities, and medicine. Tuberculosis did not always arrive like a sudden storm. It could linger for months or years, passing through breath in crowded rooms and close households. Because it often consumed the body gradually, it entered culture in a distinct way. It became associated with pale beauty, artistic suffering, poverty, and fragile genius in parts of 19th century Europe. Those romantic ideas were misleading and cruel, but they show how deeply the disease entered imagination. In reality, tuberculosis thrived where people lived in cramped housing with poor ventilation and limited nutrition. It shaped city reform, hospital design, public health campaigns, and later, antibiotic treatment. It also changed personal lives through long separations and uncertain recoveries. A person might leave home for treatment and never return the same. Tuberculosis teaches that not every pandemic force is sudden. Some diseases transform society by persistence, by staying close, by moving slowly through breath, family, work, and memory. Sanatoriums turned fresh air into a medical treatment philosophy. Before antibiotics transformed tuberculosis care, many patients were sent to sanatoriums. These institutions were often built in mountains, forests, or rural settings where the air was believed to be cleaner and healthier. Treatment centered on rest, nutrition, sunlight, routine, and exposure to fresh air. Patients might spend hours reclining outdoors, even in cold weather, wrapped in blankets on porches. The approach did not cure everyone, but it reflected a serious attempt to give the body its best chance before modern drugs existed. Sanatorium life could be lonely and disciplined. It separated patients from families and placed them under strict schedules. Yet it also created communities of people living with the same uncertain hope. The buildings themselves became part of the medical idea. Architecture, landscape, and daily rhythm were treated as therapy. Sanatoriums remind us that medicine once fought chronic infection with climate, patience, order, and the belief that the environment could help the body endure. HIV changed global medicine, activism, and the language of stigma. When this virus emerged into public awareness, it entered a world that was medically unprepared and socially divided. Early patients were often met with fear before they were met with compassion. Rumors spread quickly, and prejudice attached itself to illness in ways that caused deep harm. Yet from that pain came one of the most powerful activist movements in modern health history. Patients, families, doctors, and campaigners demanded research, treatment access, honest information, and dignity. They challenged institutions that moved too slowly. They forced public health to speak more clearly about risk without turning people into symbols of blame. The crisis changed clinical trials, drug approval, community education, and the rights of patients to be heard. It also transformed the language of illness. Words could wound, but they could also protect. The history of this pandemic reminds us that medicine is never only about cells and drugs. It is also about how society chooses to see the people who are suffering. HIV revealed how deeply pandemics can test compassion. A pandemic does not only test hospitals, it tests the moral reflexes of a society. In the early years of this crisis, many people living with the virus faced abandonment, shame, and silence. Some lost friends. Some lost jobs. Some were treated as threats rather than human beings in need of care. Yet there were also extraordinary acts of love. Nurses held hands when families would not come. Volunteers delivered meals. Friends became caregivers. Communities built support networks where official systems failed. The disease forced a difficult question into public life. Would fear decide how people were treated, or would care survive fear? That question shaped education campaigns, legal battles, memorials, and public health work. The answer was never perfect, but the struggle changed the world. It showed that compassion is not a soft addition to pandemic response. It is part of survival itself, because people seek testing, treatment, and truth when they are not afraid of being cast out. Antiretroviral therapy transformed HIV from fatal to manageable for many. The shift was one of the most extraordinary turns in modern medicine. In the early years, diagnosis often carried a terrible expectation of decline. Doctors could treat infections that appeared along the way, but they could not control the underlying virus with lasting success. Then combinations of drugs began to change the future. Antiretroviral therapy targeted different stages of viral replication, making it much harder for the virus to multiply freely. For many people with access to consistent treatment, the result was life extended by decades. Viral levels could fall so low that ordinary tests could not detect them. This also transformed prevention, because effective treatment greatly reduces the chance of transmission. The science was remarkable, but access became the next battle. Medicine only changes history when it reaches people. The story is therefore both triumphant and unfinished. It shows what research can achieve, and it reminds us that a breakthrough becomes humane only when it is shared. The SARS outbreak showed how quickly hospitals could become front lines. In 2002 and 2003, a new respiratory disease forced medical workers into a frightening role. Hospitals were meant to be places of care, yet they could also become places where infections spread. Patients arrived with fever and breathing trouble. Staff worked close to them, often before the danger was fully understood. Protective equipment, triage, isolation rooms, and rapid communication became urgent. The outbreak revealed that a hospital is not separate from a pandemic. It is one of the most important battlegrounds inside it. A single missed infection could expose nurses, doctors, cleaners, patients, and visitors. This placed enormous pressure on people already trying to save lives. It also changed planning for future outbreaks. Hospitals began thinking more carefully about airflow, screening, personal protection, and the speed of alert systems. The lesson was sharp. Caring for the sick requires protecting the caregivers, because when health workers fall, the entire response grows weaker. SARS also showed that rapid cooperation could stop a new threat. The disease was frightening because it was unfamiliar, severe, and capable of spreading between countries. Yet it was contained. That achievement depended on speed, honesty, and international coordination. Clinicians noticed unusual pneumonia clusters. Laboratories worked to identify the cause. Public health teams traced contacts, isolated cases, and issued warnings. Researchers shared findings across borders while the outbreak was still moving. Travel alerts and hospital precautions helped slow the chains of transmission. The virus did not disappear because one country solved the problem alone. It was stopped through linked action. That makes the episode deeply important. It proved that a dangerous new infection could be controlled when the world responded quickly enough. It also showed how fragile that success can be. Delays, secrecy, or weak surveillance could have changed the outcome. In pandemic history, time is not just a measurement. It is a resource. During SARS, enough people used that resource well, and a wider disaster was avoided. The Ebola outbreaks revealed the importance of trust during crisis. Ebola is terrifying because its symptoms can be severe and its outbreaks can move through close caregiving networks. But the response is not only technical. Protective suits, treatment units, testing, and contact tracing matter greatly, yet they work best when communities trust the people using them. In some outbreaks, fear and rumor made response efforts harder. Families worried that loved ones taken to treatment centers would never return. Local customs were sometimes misunderstood by outside teams. Historical distrust of authorities made instructions feel suspicious. Successful responders learned that listening could save lives. They worked with local leaders, explained risks clearly, adapted practices where possible, and treated families with respect. The science of Ebola control remained essential, but trust became the bridge that carried science into daily behavior. This is one of the clearest lessons in outbreak history. People are more likely to accept difficult measures when they feel seen, respected, and told the truth. Community burial practices became crucial during some Ebola responses. In many places, caring for the dead is an act of love, duty, and identity. During Ebola outbreaks, this became one of the most sensitive parts of control. The bodies of people who died from the disease could still carry high risk, especially when relatives washed, touched, or prepared them according to tradition. Health teams had to prevent transmission without treating grief as a problem to be erased. Early responses sometimes failed because they seemed to violate dignity. Later approaches worked harder to create safer burials that still allowed families to witness, pray, mourn, and know where their loved ones rested. This required negotiation, patience, and cultural understanding. It also showed that public health cannot succeed by biology alone. A burial is not just a procedure. It is a final human bond. When responders honored that bond while reducing risk, they protected both life and memory. The lesson remains profound. Safety and dignity must travel together. Zika changed how scientists understood mosquito-borne viral risks. At first, many people thought of this infection as mild. Fever, rash, joint pain, and red eyes could appear, but many cases caused little alarm. Then doctors began noticing a devastating pattern. Infection during pregnancy could harm fetal brain development and lead to severe birth defects. This shifted global attention. A mosquito-borne virus was no longer understood only as a short illness in the person bitten. It could affect a child not yet born. That realization changed surveillance, travel advice, reproductive counseling, mosquito control, and vaccine research priorities. It also placed families in heartbreaking uncertainty, especially in regions where mosquito exposure was difficult to avoid. Zika showed that the impact of a virus can be hidden until clinicians connect scattered observations. It reminded science to look beyond the obvious symptom. Sometimes the deepest consequence of infection appears in another body, at another time, after the first illness has already faded. The COVID pandemic made genomic surveillance a household idea. Before this crisis, most people had little reason to think about viral genomes. That changed when variants became part of ordinary conversation. Scientists around the world sequenced samples and compared tiny genetic differences, allowing them to track how the virus was changing. These sequences helped identify lineages, follow spread between regions, and detect mutations that might affect transmission or immunity. For the public, names and letters attached to variants became a new language of uncertainty. The science itself was extraordinary. A swab from one patient could become part of a global map within days. That map helped guide policy, vaccine updates, and risk assessment. It also showed the power of open data when laboratories share information quickly. Genomic surveillance did not stop the pandemic by itself, but it gave humanity a sharper view of a moving target. The invisible evolution of a virus became visible almost in real time, and the world learned to watch. Wastewater can reveal outbreaks before hospitals feel the surge. A city's sewage may seem like the least glamorous place to study health, yet it can carry early warning signs. When people are infected, they may shed traces of a pathogen before they seek care or even know they are sick. Those traces enter wastewater through toilets, drains, and treatment systems. By sampling sewage, scientists can detect rising levels across a community without testing every individual. This method is powerful because it sees population trends quietly and early. It can reveal an outbreak growing before clinics become crowded. It can also track viruses in places where medical testing is limited. The idea turns a shared waste stream into a public health signal. There is something remarkable about that. A hidden underground system can tell a city what is beginning to happen inside it. Wastewater surveillance shows that pandemic intelligence does not always come from a hospital bed. Sometimes it comes from beneath the street. Viral sequencing lets scientists watch evolution almost in real time. Evolution is often imagined as something ancient and slow, but viruses can reveal it at breathtaking speed. Every time a virus copies itself, small mistakes may appear in its genetic code. Most changes do little. Some disappear. A few help the virus spread under certain conditions. By sequencing many samples over time, scientists can watch these changes accumulate and branch into lineages. It is like seeing a family tree grow while the family is still moving through the world. This allows researchers to reconstruct transmission, identify introductions into new regions, and study whether mutations matter. The technology has changed the emotional scale of microbiology. A process once inferred after the fact can now be followed while it unfolds. That does not mean every change is dangerous. It means the hidden drama of adaptation has become observable. Viral sequencing lets humanity listen to the genetic footsteps of a pathogen as it searches for its next opportunity. Some pandemic discoveries begin with one unusual cluster of illness. Many major investigations start with a pattern that someone refuses to ignore. A doctor may notice several patients with the same rare symptoms. A nurse may feel that a ward has too many similar cases. A local health worker may hear of unexplained deaths in neighboring households. At first, the evidence can look small. It may be only a cluster, a handful of people linked by place, time, or exposure. But that is often how a larger story announces itself. The key is curiosity, disciplined by method. Investigators ask who is sick, when symptoms began, what they shared, and whether the pattern is growing. A cluster can reveal contaminated food, a new virus, an environmental hazard, or a failure in infection control. It can also prevent disaster if acted upon early. Pandemic history is full of these beginnings. Before the world sees a crisis, someone nearby sees a strange pattern and decides it matters. Patient zero is often a story, not a simple fact. The phrase sounds precise, as though every outbreak has a single identifiable beginning. Reality is usually messier. The first known patient may not be the first infected person. They may simply be the first one noticed, tested, recorded, or remembered. Early transmission can be silent, mild, misdiagnosed, or hidden by poor surveillance. By the time investigators recognize an outbreak, several chains may already exist. The idea of one origin person can also become unfair. It can invite blame towards someone who was unlucky enough to be visible in the records. In some famous cases, the term itself grew from confusion and later took on a life of its own. Outbreak investigation still needs timelines and early cases, but it must handle them carefully. A pandemic is rarely a neat detective story with one culprit. It is a network event. The search for beginnings can teach us much, but it should not turn a person into a symbol. Super-spreading events can drive outbreaks more than average transmission suggests. An average can hide the shape of reality. In some diseases, many infected people transmit to few or no others, while a small number of events cause large bursts of spread. These events can happen when timing, environment, behavior, and biology align. A person may be highly infectious at a moment when they attend a crowded gathering. The room may have poor airflow. People may speak loudly, sing, eat together, or remain close for a long time. The result can be dozens of infections from one setting. This pattern changes outbreak strategy. Instead of treating all situations as equal, public health can focus on the conditions that create explosive spread. It also explains why some outbreaks seem to leap suddenly after quiet periods. Superspreading is not about blame. It is about circumstance. A single event can become a turning point because a pathogen finds the perfect room at the perfect time, with too many pathways open. Crowded indoor air can turn ordinary rooms into transmission spaces. A room can look safe and still hold risk. When people breathe, speak, cough, or sing, they release tiny particles into the air. In a poorly ventilated indoor space, those particles can build up, especially when people remain together for long periods. The danger is not always visible. There may be no smell, no haze, and no obvious warning. That is what makes airborne transmission so unsettling. It turns the shared air itself into part of the setting. Restaurants, offices, classrooms, buses, and homes can all become different environments depending on airflow, crowding, and time. This does not mean every room is dangerous. It means the invisible architecture of air matters. Fresh air, filtration, and shorter exposure can change risk. Pandemic history often focuses on people moving across maps, but sometimes the crucial map is smaller. It is the path of breath inside four walls, circulating quietly while ordinary life continues. Ventilation became an old idea with renewed importance. Long before modern aerosol science, people suspected that stale air was unhealthy. Hospitals, schools, factories, and homes were often judged by how well air moved through them. Later, germ theory shifted attention towards specific pathogens, but the quality of indoor air never stopped mattering. Recent respiratory pandemics brought ventilation back into public conversation with new evidence and sharper tools. Engineers, doctors, and building managers began speaking the same language of airflow, filtration, carbon dioxide monitoring, and air changes. The idea is simple at heart. Dilute what may be infectious. Remove it before others breathe it in. This makes buildings part of health protection. A window, a fan, a filter, or a redesigned system can become a quiet intervention. The renewed focus also reminds us that public health is not only behavior. It is built into spaces. The walls around us can either trap risk or help carry it away. Hand washing was once controversial among doctors. It is difficult to imagine now, but there was a time when many physicians did not accept that their own hands could carry lethal danger between patients. Medicine had prestige, but it lacked a full understanding of microbes. Doctors moved from autopsies to examinations, from one bedside to another, often without washing in ways we would now consider essential. When reformers argued that hand hygiene could prevent deaths, the claim felt insulting to some professionals. It suggested that healers might be spreading harm. Pride, habit, and incomplete theory all slowed acceptance. The controversy shows how difficult it can be to change behavior even when lives are at stake. Evidence alone may not be enough if it threatens identity. Today, hand washing is one of the simplest acts in healthcare and daily life. Its history is a reminder that obvious truths often become obvious only after someone has fought hard to make people see them. Ignaz Semmelweis saw hand hygiene save mothers before germ theory triumphed. In a Vienna maternity clinic, one ward had a horrifying death rate from childbed fever. Semmelweis noticed a crucial difference. Medical students moved from autopsies to deliveries, while midwives did not follow the same pattern. He suspected that something from the cadavers was being carried to laboring women. When he required hand cleaning with chlorinated lime, deaths fell dramatically. The result should have changed medicine quickly. Instead, his ideas were resisted, mocked, or ignored by many colleagues. He could not yet explain the mechanism in the language germ theory later provided. His manner and conflicts also made acceptance harder. Still, the core observation was powerful. Clean hands could save mothers. The tragedy of his story lies in the gap between evidence and belief. Women died while a life-saving practice struggled for recognition. Semmelweis stands as one of history's most painful examples of a person seeing the truth before the world was ready to accept it. Hospitals became safer when cleanliness became scientific practice. For much of history, entering a hospital carried serious risk. These places gathered the sick, the wounded, and the vulnerable under one roof. Without reliable antisepsis, infection could spread through instruments, linens, hands, surfaces, and crowded wards. The transformation came when cleanliness became more than a virtue. It became a scientific system. Sterilized tools, disinfected spaces, hand hygiene, waste control, and later aseptic surgical technique changed outcomes dramatically. Hospitals began to redesign routines around the idea that invisible organisms could be carried from one patient to another. This required training and discipline. It also required a change in mindset. Cleanliness was no longer just what looked tidy. It was what interrupted transmission. The safer hospital is one of the great achievements of modern medicine because it made advanced care possible. Surgery, childbirth, worm treatment, and intensive care all depend on infection control. Healing needed science not only in medicines, but in every surface touched along the way. Vaccination campaigns depend on trust as much as technology. A vaccine can be brilliantly designed and still fail to protect a population if people do not accept it. Campaigns succeed when communities understand the benefit, believe the messengers, and can access the service without humiliation or fear. This requires much more than supply. It requires listening. People may worry about side effects, distrust authorities, remember past mistreatment, or face practical barriers such as distance and cost. A successful campaign answers concerns with respect rather than contempt. It brings vaccines to schools, clinics, workplaces, villages, and temporary sites where people can realistically receive them. It also explains why collective protection matters. The needle may enter one arm, but the effect can reach newborns, elders, and people with fragile immunity. This is the social beauty of vaccination. It is personal and communal at once. The technology is powerful, but trust is the bridge that lets the technology become protection. Herd immunity protects communities when enough people become resistant. A pathogen spreads by finding susceptible people. When many individuals are immune through vaccination or previous infection, its path becomes harder. It may reach one person but fail to move onward because too many surrounding routes are blocked. This indirect protection can shelter those who cannot be vaccinated or who do not respond strongly to vaccines. The idea is often misunderstood as a personal shield. It is better understood as a community pattern. Its strength depends on how contagious the disease is, how durable immunity remains, and how evenly protection is distributed. If immunity clusters in some places but leaves gaps in others, outbreaks can still occur. The concept is powerful because it shows that immunity has geography and social structure. One person's protection can help another person they never meet. That makes herd immunity both biological and ethical. It turns private health decisions into part of a wider web of safety. Vaccine hesitancy is nearly as old as vaccination itself. Resistance did not begin in the internet age. When early vaccinations spread, some people feared the procedure, distrusted officials, objected on religious grounds, or resented mandates. Pamphlets, cartoons, speeches, and rumors circulated with surprising energy. Some objections were based on misunderstanding. Others grew from real concerns about safety, coercion, or the behavior of authorities. This history matters because it shows that hesitation is not simply ignorance. It often grows where fear meets mistrust. Public health has struggled for centuries to answer that combination. The challenge is to correct false claims without dismissing people's anxieties. The persistence of hesitancy also reveals something important about vaccines themselves. They are given to people who are often healthy, which means trust must exist before visible illness appears. Asking someone to accept prevention requires confidence in a future benefit. That is a difficult human request. The science can be strong, but the conversation around it must be patient, honest, and deeply human. Rumors have traveled beside pandemics for thousands of years. When fear rises faster than understanding, stories rush in to fill the empty space. People have blamed strangers, poisons, stars, governments, animals, and moral failure for outbreaks they could not explain. Rumors spread because they offer shape to chaos. They name a cause, identify a villain, or promise secret protection. In the past, they moved through markets, taverns, letters, sermons, and whispered conversation. Today they move faster, but the human need underneath is old. The danger is that false stories can harm real people. They can lead to violence, delay treatment, undermine prevention, or create panic. Yet rumors also reveal what communities fear most. They are symptoms of uncertainty. Responding to them requires more than correction. It requires giving people clear information before falsehood becomes emotionally useful. Pandemic history teaches that misinformation is not a side issue. It is part of the outbreak environment, spreading through minds while microbes move through bodies. Newspapers once shaped public fear before radio or television existed. Before broadcasts and online feeds, printed pages carried outbreak news into homes, shops, and railway compartments. A newspaper could warn a city, reassure it, frighten it, or mislead it. Headlines turned distant illness into a local concern. Death counts gave readers a sense of scale, even when the numbers were incomplete. Editorials argued over quarantine, business closures, hospital conditions, and government action. Advertisements sometimes promoted cures of doubtful value. The press became a mediator between official knowledge and public emotion. This power was especially important because many people had no direct access to medical experts. They learned what to fear and what to do from ink on paper. Newspapers could encourage cooperation, but they could also intensify blame or false confidence. The history of pandemic journalism reminds us that communication technology always shapes the experience of disease. The pathogen spreads through bodies, while information spreads through the channels a society trusts most. Pandemic diaries show private lives inside world-changing events. Large histories often speak in numbers, but diaries return the story to the room where someone was living. A person might write about a neighbor falling ill, a shop closing, a funeral missed, or the strange feeling of empty streets. These private records capture details official documents overlook. They show boredom, fear, tenderness, irritation, faith, grief, and small routines continuing under pressure. A diary can reveal what guidance people actually heard, what rumors they believed, and how families adapted day by day. It can also show the unevenness of crisis. One household may be devastated, while another waits anxiously with no cases inside. For historians, such writings are precious because they preserve the texture of lived experience. They remind us that a pandemic is never only a curve on a chart. It is breakfast made in worry. It is a letter unanswered. It is a person trying to make sense of history while still inside it. Closed schools have appeared in pandemic plans for generations. Keeping children home during outbreaks may feel like a modern strategy, but it has a long history. Schools gather many young people indoors, then send them back to many households. That makes them important in the movement of respiratory infections. Closing them can slow contact, but the decision is never simple. Children lose lessons, parents lose working time, and vulnerable families may lose meals or supervision. Past pandemic planners understood this trade-off. They weighed educational harm against the risk of accelerating spread. Communities also differed in how quickly they acted and how long closures lasted. The measure reveals a central difficulty of public health. Actions that protect bodies constrain social life. A classroom is more than a site of learning. It is part of a family's daily structure. School closure therefore sits at the intersection of health, childhood, work, and inequality. Its history shows that even sensible interventions carry human costs that must be faced. Remote work has historical roots in earlier disease disruptions. The technology is modern, but the impulse is older. During outbreaks, people have long tried to keep necessary work going while reducing contact. Merchants wrote letters instead of meeting. Officials sent instructions by courier. Scholars, clerks, and professionals sometimes worked from home when streets or offices felt unsafe. In later eras, Telephones, typewriters, fax machines, email, and video calls expanded what distance could accomplish. The recent rise of remote work did not come from nowhere. It was part of the long human habit of adapting labor during danger. What changed was scale. Digital tools allowed millions to move parts of office life into bedrooms, kitchens, and spare rooms. This protected some workers while exposing inequalities for those whose jobs had to remain physical. The history is fascinating because it shows that pandemics do not simply stop work. They rearrange it. They reveal which tasks require presence and which were tied to place mostly by tradition. Pandemics often expose hidden inequalities with painful clarity. Disease may be biological, but exposure is often social. People do not face outbreaks from equal positions. Some can work from home, while others must risk crowded transport. Some have space to isolate, while others share rooms. Some can access care early, while others delay because of cost, distance, language, or mistrust. Pre-existing illness, unsafe housing, unstable work, and discrimination can all shape who suffers most. A pandemic therefore acts like a harsh light on conditions that were already present. It does not invent inequality. It reveals and intensifies it. This is why death rates and hardship often differ between neighborhoods, occupations, and communities. The pattern can feel shocking, but it is rarely random. It follows the structure of society. To study pandemics honestly, we must look beyond the pathogen itself. We must ask who had protection, who had choices, and who was asked to carry risk for the comfort of others. The next pandemic may be stopped by lessons from the last. Humanity never begins again with an entirely blank page. Each crisis leaves tools, memories, warnings, and mistakes. Laboratories improve tests. Hospitals revise plans. Communities learn which messages worked and which failed. Researchers build vaccine platforms. Governments discover the cost of delay. Families remember what fear felt like. These lessons do not guarantee success because every pathogen has its own behavior and every society has its own weaknesses. Still, memory can become preparation when it is taken seriously. The danger is forgetting once normal life returns. Budgets shrink. Stockpiles expire. Training fades. Warnings begin to sound distant. Then a new outbreak asks whether the old lessons were truly learned. The hope lies in using grief as instruction rather than letting it vanish into statistics. The next threat may be met earlier because someone improved surveillance, protected health workers, strengthened trust, or acted before the pattern grew. Preparedness is the art of remembering in time. Every pandemic leaves behind a map of human connection. When historians look back, they see more than disease. They see the pathways people built between one another. Outbreaks reveal roads, ports, homes, workplaces, rituals, borders, and inequalities. They show who cared for whom, who was ignored, who moved, and who could not move. A pandemic traces the shape of a society by following contact. Sometimes the map is physical, drawn across continents and cities. Sometimes it is emotional, drawn through families, friendships, caregiving, and grief. The disease moves through connection, but so does help. Food deliveries, nursing, research, warnings, and vaccines all travel through human networks too. That is the final wonder of this history. The same connectedness that makes us vulnerable also makes rescue possible. Pandemics reveal that no life is completely separate. Breath, labor, water, knowledge, and care bind people together. After the crisis passes, the map remains. It shows not only where the disease went, but who we were to each other. And so we come to the end of our journey through the history of pandemics. Tonight, we followed invisible forces as they moved through crowded streets, across open seas, into hospitals, homes, and the deepest records of human memory. We saw how a single outbreak could alter an empire, change the shape of a city, or push medicine toward discoveries that would protect generations still to come. We traced old fears before microscopes gave them names. We watched quarantine grow from a cautious pause at the edge of a harbor. We saw how clean water, careful maps, safer hospitals, and shared knowledge became some of humanity's greatest protections. And again, we saw that pandemics are never only stories of illness. They are stories of connection, courage, loss, learning, and care. There is something humbling in this history. The smallest forms of life have changed the largest human plans. Yet people have always answered in remarkable ways. They have counted, listened, investigated, invented, rebuilt, and remembered. If you enjoyed this gentle journey through history, you're welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too. And if you happen to still be awake, there should be another video waiting on the screen, ready to carry you into a new story. But for now, there is nothing more you need to do. Let the facts soften into the background. Let the old cities grow distant. Let the ships rest in their harbors, and let the lamps in the windows fade one by one. Allow your shoulders to loosen. Let your breathing find its own slow rhythm. The long day can drift behind you now. History will wait where it is, steady and still, until you are ready to return. Sleep well, and good night.